طويل الشوق يبقى في اغترابي.
Came out with Hinda radiallahu anha to beat them drums in the battle of Uhud. Sisters, y'all know? Hakim. Who's Hakim? Hakim? Huh? Mother of Hakim. Yo, that's cold-blooded. You win, man. You win. The mother of Hakim. You guys, mother of Hakim. She's Abu Jahl's daughter-in-law. Abu Jahl's daughter-in-law. Ikrimah radiallahu anhu's wife. So Ikrimah radiallahu anhu's wife, so she became Muslim. She's the one who exhorted Ikrimah radiallahu anhu to become Muslim. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is, as his reputation precedes him, he does accept tawbah, he does accept, apologies to go to him and become Muslim. So Ikrimah becomes Muslim through her encouragement and her efforts. So Hakim radiallahu anha, when Ikrimah passes away, he also passed away in the battle of Yarmouk. In the famous battle of Yarmouk, Ikrimah radiallahu anhu went all out. And subhanAllah, he passed away. So his widow was married, Hakim radiallahu anha was married later by Umar radiallahu anhu. That was one of his spouses as well. Eventually he also marries Kulthum bint Ali. There you go, Ali radiallahu anhu. That's TA right there. Kulthum bint Ali radiallahu anha. Kulthum radiallahu anha is, again, she's a lot younger, but the reason why he married her is because he literally went to Ali radiallahu anhu one day and he's like, I really want to be related to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Related to him, I want to be related to him too, please. And then he said, of course, let me ask her, and subhanAllah, he married Kulthum bint Ali radiallahu anha. So those are his spouses, his children. We know about many of them, and many of them we probably don't even know about because he had lots and lots of kids. The famous ones, Asim radiallahu anhu, Hafsa radiallahu anhu. The oldest one is Hafsa radiallahu anhu. That's why one of his nicknames of Umar radiallahu anhu was Abu Hafs. Abu Hafs. Why? Because of Hafsa being the oldest. Hafsa radiallahu anha. There's Hafsa, there's Asim, there's Abdullah, the famous Abdullah ibn Umar, who was his carbon copy. Then he had a whole bunch of Abdurrahmans. Right? Like he had Abdurrahman al-Akbar, Abdurrahman al-Awsat, Abdurrahman al-Asghar. Like he just kept having kids. So he's just y'all all Abdurrahman. Right? All had different personality. Right? Abdurrahman the big one, Abdurrahman the middle one, Abdurrahman the little one. Right? So he had lots of Abdurrahmans as well. So these were Umar radiallahu anhu's well-known children. And so that's a little bit about his family life. Then about his looks, what he looked like. So I want you to picture whatever it is this sounds like to you in your head. He is very, very tall. So if he sits on the camel, his feet touch the ground. Right? He's very, very tall to a point where if you, remember we said Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu pulled him down, right, to talk to him? Like he was face to face with him when he pulled him down. Right? So that's literally how tall he is. He literally has a couple of feet on everybody. So he's really, really tall. He's very, very muscular. He's very buff. Right? Just naturally, he had that and it wasn't even a sleeper build. That's a new term I learned from young people. he was vividly muscular. He had a whitish, reddish complexion. Right? So he was light skinned. There's different reports about that. They said, some people say he was pale and, leaning more towards the caramelish color. But that was because they're both correct. Right? Later on in Am al-Ramada, when the drought hit Medina, he actually forbade himself from eating. Right? To a point where he starved himself because of the Muslimin not having enough food, took an oath that I'm not going to eat, and then he actually changed colors because of that. So subhanAllah, both are correct. But throughout his life, he was whitish red with a hint of red in terms of his skin tone. He had hair, which then he lost later on in life. Right? Like the Prophet, we know he had his hair all the way till the end, but Umar radiallahu anhu lost his hair. He balded, which is why, when do we know that? When he goes to Jerusalem. And we're going to talk about, that's going to be its own lecture when he goes to Jerusalem. He went without his turban and he went with his bald head, just exposed it. And subhanAllah, even though he had a bald head up here, he would grow his hair out. You know what I'm saying? So it would be kind of sticking out of his turban. He had a we said a little beard naturally, a larger beard, and he had, opposite of Rasulullah used to take off his mustache, or maybe if not shave it, you would trim it down all the way till it was not even visible. But Umar radiallahu anhu had a very large mustache. So large, it wouldn't be like nasty, like where, you know what I'm saying, it covers your mouth. You know what I'm saying? But it would be large this way. Meaning, like, whenever he would get stressed, his stress reliever was he would take his mustache and start, like, braiding it, like, within his fingers, right? So Umar radiallahu anhu, big mustache. He had large, deeply sunken eyes as well, radiallahu anhu. Very big hands, very big feet, like, very, very large individual. And subhanAllah, his personality, like, what did he sound like? Aisha radiallahu anha said it the best. But before that, there's another incident that comes to mind. One time he was getting a haircut and just like out, right? Because the barber, like, sometimes it nicks you or whatever, is out. And the report says the man fainted and he never woke up. Because he just grunted. A very, very loud voice. Aisha radiallahu anha says pertaining to him, كان عمر رضي الله عنه إذا مشى أسرع. When he walked, it was very, very fast. He never ever, like, lagged. He never had lethargy to his walk. وكان إذا تكلم أسمع. When he spoke, it wasn't like loud to a point where it hurts your ears. It just, no, asma. He made sure everybody heard what he had to say. And then, وكان إذا ضرب أوجع. When he hit, he made sure it hurt you. It wasn't like an empty hit. Like, no, every time he hit, it had a purpose to it and definitely hurt. So this is a little bit, and then subhanAllah, another narration adds that subhanAllah, when he gave very, very generously as well. So this is a little bit about his personality. Now, what was Umar radiallahu anhu up to in his youth? Like, what was he doing? Like, what was going on for him, life before Islam? What was it like for him? Umar radiallahu anhu was somebody who the Quraysh deeply loved because of, subhanAllah, not just his physicality, but because he put that physicality to use. We said for work, he used to work for Pops, right? Like, he used to graze camels for his daddy, for Khattab. And that wasn't going too well because his daddy would barely ever pay him. And he would only just criticize him or beat him up. So then he would then resort to his aunties, his Makhzumi aunties, so his khalat, like his mama's sisters, right? He would go and he would graze camels for them, and they would pay him a little. And what would they pay him? Sometimes a handful of zabib, a handful of raisins, a handful of dates, and that's it. That's all he would get for a hard days of work. So very, very hard worker, but he wouldn't really get paid a lot. So that's why he tried to diversify his streams of income by doing other things because of his varying capabilities. So what did he do? What else did he do? He was strong, so he's like, bet, I'm going to fight. Get paid for it. He wrestled. He was a great wrestler, and no one ever beat him. It's never reported that he ever lost. So we were saying, like, Khabib goes around 29-0 and stuff, right? I don't know how many times that man fought, but there's a big fat O with the loss record, right? So he ain't never lost a fight. Umar was a wrestler. He was great. And the Quraysh would love to watch him because he was not just a wrestler that they would hire to watch, but rather he actually did it as a nobleman of Quraysh. So that would give them a great sense of pride to watch those wrestling competitions. He was also not just physically imposing, he was intellectually imposing to every person in that culture as well. Why? Because people in that culture didn't really give literacy too much importance. For them, literacy was just speaking eloquently. But Umar radiallahu anhu went out of his way to learn, in his youth, how to read and write. And they said in Mecca there was only about 17 people. 17 people, that's it, who could read and write. And Umar radiallahu anhu was one of them. In an environment where he could have literally been like, I'm just going to use my physicality to... No, he said, no, I want to use my mind as well, which is why the hikmah, the wisdom that we get, the intellectual acumen that we see in him, it was not just natural, but it was also somewhat developed. He worked hard for some of it too, right? So Umar radiallahu anhu could read and write. He was very, very poetic, so then he actually started dabbling into doing poetry as well, which is what led him to including that in his attempt to get in additional income as well. He would go into like diss battles. Back then, like just like we have, for rap, like we have diss battles and people like just dissing each other out and saying mean things to each other very poetically. And back then they had it too. So he would basically criticize people in poetry, and then they would criticize him back in poetry. So he did that for money too. So he's a very, very excellent, eloquent sha'i. And then he was also a very good spokesperson, meaning like when he just spoke without poetry too, it just seemed poetic. Like every time that man opened his mouth, it was like pearls just coming out. So then the Quraysh was like, dude, you strong, you smart, you're scary a little bit. So why not you be our spokesperson? Right? This is different than Suhail ibn Amr radiallahu anhu's role. Suhail ibn Amr radiallahu anhu's role was what? He was Khatib of Quraysh. He was the speech man of Quraysh. So in English we would say the orator, right? The guy who would give speeches. Well, Umar, meaning like an official address. If Quraysh had something to announce to the people, basically we need people to not like Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Here, the khutbah is going to be given by Suhail ibn Amr. He's a khatib. But Safir Quraysh was Umar's title, radiallahu anhu. Safir is the one who speaks to defend Quraysh. Meaning if there's a statement made against the honor or the dignity or just basically the reputation of Quraysh, it would be Umar in his poetic capabilities, his imposing voice, his absolutely stunningly intimidating stature, and subhanAllah, his very, very intelligent thought process that would come and speak on behalf of the Quraysh to defend them. So this is Umar radiallahu anhu's job officially amongst the people. He is Safir Quraysh. You can understand now, he's a very, very loved, very deeply respected youngster amongst the Quraysh. And that led him to being amongst the very few young people that they would actually invite inside of their gatherings. Right? When they would get into that little government building called Darul Nadwa, I told you, right, it was pretty bootleg the system because there wasn't any central command, right? Like there wasn't a leader that would tell everybody what to do, but rather they would all come, discuss ideas, and everybody would walk away with a ruling that befitted them. Right? Umar radiallahu anhu in this community, like all the other young people, like Khalid radiallahu anhu ibn Walid, Safwan ibn Umayyah, all these people, they would sit outside, they would just be chilling. Like they would be like, let these elders talk about whatever they want to talk about. Then they would talk about what regular young people talk about. Umar would actually go sit with the elders, and his opinion amongst the elders was very, very valued. Right? Now you can understand how not just deeply loved, but deeply respected he is by the Quraysh. Now coming to, where does Islam come in the picture? How does it bode with him and his personality when Rasulullah comes out with the message? So one of the first accounts that we have of him hearing about the message was not actually from a person or a recognizable person at the very least, right? He actually was laying down near the Kaaba. He said, I was knocked out. That's how he starts the narration. One day while I was knocked out, I basically see a person coming near the Kaaba. I wake up, whether it's in his vision or whether it's in reality, that's not necessarily mentioned, but we can imagine it could have been either. But he says, a person came near the Kaaba, a man came near the Kaaba, and he sacrificed an animal. Basically, that's what they would do for the idols. They would sacrifice an animal and be like, here you go, this is our sacrifice for you. But the idol couldn't eat, which is, again, it was very, very sensitive. We're going to talk about Umar relation with these idols in just a second. So he sacrificed an idol, and then, as the person was wrapping up his sacrifice, a voice, a booming, thunderous voice, echoed throughout the Haram area, the Kaaba area. Ya Jalih, Amrun Najih, Rajulun Fasih, Yaqulu la ilaha illa ant. Ya Jalih, meaning, oh you wrongdoer, meaning wrongdoer, what do you do wrong? You just sacrifice for the idol, right? Amrun Najih, stop this nonsense because there's actually a new affair that's more successful, that is bound to be more successful. Rajulun Fasih, a very eloquent man, referring to i.e. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yaqulu la ilaha illallah, and what does he say that's going to make this matter successful? La ilaha illallah. Basically, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only God. These idols that y'all worship are nothing. So subhanAllah, this is the first time Umar radiallahu anhu heard something unique to the idea of idol worship because he was an idol worshiper too. Right? We said Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, his daddy tried to make him an idol worshiper, but it didn't work because his fitrah wouldn't let him. Umar radiallahu anhu was an idol worshiper back in the day, and subhanAllah, when he heard against idols this random voice, He said everybody in the haram, because of how thunderous and arbitrary that voice was, they got scared and they ran away. Or they tried to hide and they didn't try to investigate. But Umar radiallahu anhu was not scared of anything. You're going to see. He's not scared of anything. He says, I want to go find out where this voice came from. So he starts following the direction of the voice, but he's like, I couldn't find anybody. It was literally as if it was a supernatural occurrence, right? Like it just absolutely made no sense. The voice thunderously just made itself enunciated and it just disappeared into thin air. So nevertheless, this is like his first exposure to, well, there's something other than Islam. And then obviously because he's so heavily involved in the politics of Quraysh, he's always just right there, he eventually hears about it. But when he hears about it, here's his relationship with idol worship. And he narrates this way after he became Muslim, reflecting, remember the Sahaba, the Prophet ﷺ, sometimes he would sit with them, and then they used to talk about Ayyam al-Jahiliyyah, like the days of their ignorance. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, back in the day I was drunk. You know what I'm saying? Imagine the Sahaba stories like that. Loki, I want to ask some of them when we go to Jannah, like, yo, what y'all do? So Umar radiallahu anhu, again, he was reflecting on his Jahili days. And what the purpose was is, Alhamdulillah, alladhi hadana li hada. All praise is due to Allah who guided us to so much better. Otherwise, we would have been tripping just like we were back in Jahili days. So Umar radiallahu anhu one day narrates about himself, and that speaks to his relationship with idol worship. He said, one day, I went on a journey. And one thing I forgot to mention about his jobs, and that's probably because it didn't last long, is he tried to be a businessman too. Abu Bakr was an excellent businessman. But like they say in Arabic, لِكُلِّ فَنٍ رِجَالٍ. Every field has their experts. He wasn't very good at it, even though he traveled all the way to Sham and all these places for business. He wasn't good at it, so he didn't continue doing it. But subhanAllah, he said, on one of these journeys while I was traveling, he said, I forgot to take my idol. And business wasn't going so good, so I wanted to pray to God. And for them, like, in order for you to pray to God, you need your idol, you need your God. So he said, I was so stressed that I needed to do something to create an environment of prayer. He said, I had a bag of dates in front of me. So what I did was, I took all them dates out of the bag, I pitted them, like I took the little pits out, the stones of the date, I took them out, I mushed them, kind of like Play-Doh. Now we got some date Play-Doh, and I molded them into an idol-looking thing. This is hilarious. Like, imagine an idol that's made out of dates, because the boy wanted to pray. So he says, then I prayed. I had a very sincere dua time with my idol. And then he says, a little while passed, and he said, I got hungry. And then he said, I started praying to my God for food. And then I realized he is the food. So then I just ate my God. So again, like, they were very, very devoted to idols, but subhanAllah, he used to reflect on how silly he used to be, in the days of Jahiliyyah with his relationship to idols. So again, he was an idol worshiper. He heard that, but that was a random voice that he heard. So now, when he actually hears it from live people, he hears it from who? From his uncle. We talked about how Abu Jahl is his uncle. And what is Abu Jahl doing to not just, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, but all of his followers? He's annoying them, he's hurting them, he's torturing them in the worst ways. He literally killed Sumayya radiallahu anhu. So all kinds of stuff. And Umar radiallahu anhu, not for the same reasons as Abu Jahl. This is a clear difference. But for different reasons, because his goal in life is, I'm going to make my community a united community. I'm going to make these people very, very strong. Everything was about the well-being of Quraysh, right? Whereas Abu Jahl, his motivation for being against Islam was what? It's Banu Hashim versus Banu Makhzum. Like, if we give y'all a prophet, we're never going to have ever the opportunity to say we one-upped you. Like, you have a whole prophet. Like, we don't have anything in comparison to that. So Abu Jahl was just straight up evil, and it was straight up tribalism. Umar radiallahu anhu was not tribalism, it was communal welfare that was on his mind. That, this is actually splitting between people. Right? Like, there's the daddy Muslim, and the son is, kafir. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu's son, Abdurrahman, who was non-Muslim the whole time. They actually had a father-son moment one time after he became Muslim, Abdurrahman. And Abdurrahman said, you know, my dear beloved father, on the day of Badr, he was actually on the other side, Abdurrahman bin Abi Bakr, right? He said, I was trying to avoid you because you knew you're my dad and I love you and stuff. And he's like, that's hilarious because I was looking for you, right? So again, it turned fathers against sons and sons against father. There's, you know, Suhail ibn Amr's kid, we're going to talk about that just now. Suhail ibn Amr radiallahu anhu's son, Abdullah, he became Muslim. So Umar radiallahu anhu is like, this is cutting our community in half. It's dividing between households. This is not good for us. So Umar radiallahu anhu, what was his response to Islam? Even though he heard that little supernatural occurrence that he heard, I'm going to go persecute these people. I'm not going to do it to everybody. I'm going to do it with my own family. Why? Because set your own family right before you preach to anybody else, right? So he said, I'm going to torture Banu Adi people, my a family who's converted, my slaves who are under me. So then we talked about Lubayna, and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu has lectured, the slave girl who he used to beat up until he would get tired. So Umar radiallahu anhu is doing this. Now, subhanAllah, as he's doing this, one night, he goes to the valleys, right? And you're going to see this is a very common theme that also kind of leads up to his conversion as well. Umar radiallahu anhu goes out after a long days of, we said he was a hard worker, a long days of hard work. He'd go out to the valleys of Mecca and just stare at the sky and just like relax, right? That was his unwinding. Or he'd go like have a drink with his boys, right? That was one of the two things they used to do. So one night, he goes out, starry night, beautiful night, and he just wants to chill. He wants to unwind. And he sees there a youngster sitting down. And this youngster is the son of Suhail ibn Amr, who's what we said, Khatib Quraysh. The khutbah man of Quraysh. They definitely know each other because they both have jobs. Safir Quraysh, Khatib Quraysh. So he knows his kid too. He says, Ya Abdullah, ما أخرجك هذا الساعة هذه الساعة وقد جن الليل. So Ya Abdullah, what you doing out here this late at night? And you're basically this past your bedtime, boy. Go home. What you doing out here? I understand why I'm here. What are you doing out here? Now Abdullah bin Suhail bin Amr knows what Umar is doing to Muslims these days. Right? It's very well known because Umar doesn't hide anything. So he's not trying to have any smoke while he's trying to recover and have a thought process to himself. So he answers his question with a question. He says, Ya Umar, ma akhrajaka ant? Ma akhrujuka ant? He said, Umar, what you doing out here? Don't ask me what I'm doing. What you doing out here? And he says, جئت أنظر إلى السماء. I just came to look at the sky. أنظر إلى النجوم. You know what I'm saying? Look at the stars. واستريح. I'm just out here chilling. That's راحة. That's chill. Like, I'm not even trying to be ghetto. That's literally the translation. أستريح. I'm just chilling. So then he says, إذن أخرجني الذي أخرجك. He said, in that case, I'm doing the same thing. He's being very diplomatic and careful with how he proceeds in a conversation with the likes of Umar. So Umar, you can also tell from this that his concern for the welfare of his people is very genuine and sincere. So he tells him, Mahmoud, you're worried? You have something on your mind? Like, come, tell me, young homie, tell me what's on your mind so I can talk to you, I can engage you. So then he says, well, he saw the sincerity in Umar's voice, so he tells him actually what's on his mind. He says, look, عمر هل يعيش الرجل بقلبين واحد في جوفه وواحد غيره? He said, Umar, you tell me, is it possible for one man to live with two hearts simultaneously? One for him and one for someone else? Living through the hearts of two people, one man? أن نعصي أفئدتنا ونطيع آباءنا? Should we disobey our hearts just to obey our forefathers? And Umar is intelligent. Right away he picks up. He's like, Islam yurawiduka an hada. Islam is making you talk like this, huh? So then Abdullah says, before he can say anything actually, Umar says, well, let me answer your question for you. He says, إن كان الإسلام هو الذي يراودك. If Islam is the one that's making you talk like this, فأنت خصيمي الجدير بإعزازي وتعظيمي. He said, in that case, you're going to be an enemy to me. I'm going to hate you. But I'm going to deeply respect you. Next time you see me in front of you, I'll probably have a whip or a stick or something. But even if I'm beating you up, I'll be respecting you deeply because you're standing up for what you believe in. When he says, وَإِن كُنْتَ آثَرْتَ السَّلَامَ وَجَبُنْتَ على ما تعتقده فأنت الحليف فأنت حليفي بتحقيري. He says, if you actually choose, this is profound choice of words. He says, if you choose cowardice and if you choose convenience against that which you truly actually believe in your heart, then he says, yeah, then you can be my friend. We'll be buddies next time. But I won't respect you though. You'll be the lowest of the low. You'll be a disgraced person to me. فَلَا أَدْرِي كَيْفَ أَنصَحْ. In that case, bro, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know how to give you advice. So then Abdullah says, بَلَا قَدْ نَصَحْتَنِي ibn al-Khattab. Well, Umar gave me powerful advice. Thank you. And then he goes, and that was how he went and he told his daddy that he's Muslim. Suhail ibn Amr's son. That's a story dedicated, inshallah, for his own lecture, which we will have one day, inshallah. But Umar radiallahu anhu, engaging with people with Islam, this is another example of how he was engaging with people with Islam, which is why one time, subhanAllah, and this is the first time you can kind of see a little bit of softness, a little bit of tenderness. There was one lady who used to actually torture a lot, her and her husband, right, from his tribe. And her name was Abdullah. Right? Abdullah, I'm not going to ask because he's just going to say that's the mother of Abdullah. Right? Abdullah ibn Abi Hathma. Right? So this lady, she and her husband Amir were about to go on a journey to Habasha, right? Because they were tired of Umar beating them up. So as she's packing her bags and loading her camels and getting ready to go, Umar passes by and her husband was away. He went to go pick something up, last minute groceries, you know what I'm saying? He went to go pick something up. So she encounters Umar alone. And Umar says, like, where are you going? You're leaving? And then, instead of like hiding the hijrah or anything like that, she's just really upset. So she just emotionally has an outburst and she says, well, did you even let us stay? Like, is it even possible for us to stay with the amount of harm that you're bringing to us for being Muslim? Yeah, of course I'm leaving. You made me go. Like, you drove us out. Basically, congratulations, you happy now? I'm going. And instead of Umar, she was expecting him to like hit her or like curse at her or say something nasty or whatever. But that actually hurt him. Because he wasn't trying to do that. He was beating people up because in his head, he thought he was doing something good for the community. So when that lady said that to him, he's like, that's the first time I felt a little bit of softness. And he lowered his head and he literally said, Sahabakumullah. He said, may Allah be your companion and may you go in peace. And he walked away. So then her husband comes back, Amir comes back, and then she has a convo with hubby because he's just like, did you encounter anybody on the way? Is everything okay while I was gone? And she's like, yeah, you're not going to believe it. Someone who actually passed by is somebody who I never thought would have let me go. Omar passed by here. And then he's like, word, how'd you get out of that one? Right? And she's like, Wallahi, لَقَدْ رَأَيْتُ مِنْهُ رِقَّةً وَلِينًا مَا رَأَيْتُ مِنْهُ قَطْ. Wallahi, I saw such a softness, a tenderness in him that I actually never seen in him before. He actually said, Sahabatka salam, he actually prayed for me. Right? And then Amr just like brushed it off. He's like, him? So, girl, you think he's going to be Muslim now? Why are you talking all positive about this man who tortured us so much, Omar? Right? And she was like, yeah, maybe. You weren't there. You didn't see the tone of his voice. You didn't see like what he said to me and how he said it. And in that moment, the famous words about him were said by Amir. He said, Wallahi, it's more likely that Himarul Khattab, the donkey of Khattab, his daddy's donkey, might become Muslim before Umar ibn Khattab, before Umar the son of Khattab. Right? He's like, yo, that boy's never going to become Muslim. His dad's donkey might become Muslim before him. And subhanAllah, it shows you, like, you should be really careful before casting people out. You don't know who's going to become what. Nevertheless, we come to now the major story of what actually went down. How Islam, all of these, again, are seeds slowly being planted. The one with Suhail ibn Amr, the one with the miracle that he saw, the one with, subhanAllah, this lady and the tenderness that he felt in his heart. So all of these things are tiny, tiny little seedlings being planted in the heart of Umar radiallahu anhu. So when does it all go down? It happens one night, I told you, whenever he wanted to chill, he'd go out to either the valleys or he'd go out to, huh? Huh? No, not to Kaaba. Completely out to, huh? Yeah, you go get lit. you go to, and he had a whole bunch of drinking buddies. Like he had his personal bartender. He had like a whole bunch of boys who used to drink with him. So he went to go find himself a drink. It was stressful working for a khatab. And imagine you don't have Allah to turn to. Like obviously you need something to get your mind off of that so you can go back to work the next morning. So Omar goes to find his drinking buddies, but all of his boys are knocked out or they're not there. So he can't find any of his boys that he drinks with. So then he goes to his bartender, and he can't even find that guy there, so he finds no alcohol. So in his head, he's like, man, I gotta unwind somehow. So then he said, okay, let me take a trip to the Kaaba. Let me do a tawaf. So it goes from, let me go drink, to like, there's no drink available, so I'm gonna go to the Kaaba instead to do tawaf. So when he gets there, it's late at night. Everyone, imagine how late it has to be for even his drinking buddies to be knocked out. So it's very, very late. So he finds just one other human being near the Kaaba, and that is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Imagine, it's just Umar and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he's beating his people up for a living. Like that's all he's doing. He's hurting Muslims day and night. And this is the root cause of the problem, according to him in his head at that time.